This is Brandon Steele. Welcome to the Mainsail Financial Group Podcast series, where we host industry experts and local professionals to really help share some insights and some strategies and areas that we don't really get a chance to focus on day to day. Today we want to thank Carlos Aceves for joining us. He is a auto and home specialist, and he's going to kind of share some tips and trends that he's starting to see in the industry. Carlos is the managing principal at AGI Insurance Group there in Seattle. He's been in the industry for about 14 years, specializing in property and casualty insurance. That's mostly personal, commercial, and business coverages. What I understand, he's a top producer and been receiving awards here a lot over the recent years. Currently responsible for AGI's latest achievements, including elite and platinum brokerage status in California, Oregon, and Washington?
California, Oregon, and Washington.
All right. Perfect. Well, yeah, it's great to have you here. Thank you for coming on. I don't think we could ask for somebody better, so looking forward to kind of pick your brain a little bit here today.
I'm excited about this. Thanks for the opportunity.
Of course.
Thanks for having us here.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we start the new year, I think it's a perfect time to, kind of keep these things in mind, right? Kind of audit coverages, start to think about what you might be able to do, how to maybe save some dollars or make sure you're properly protected. So we're really excited to have you on, just kind of share some insights in some of those areas. So maybe to kind of start right there, I know there's a lot of complexity to this question, but when people are looking at guidelines, they're looking at policy details, coverage amounts, what are some best practices that you might suggest to get people started?
Like you stated, there is a lot of complexity to answering that question. What we try to do is try to understand our clients' financial position, where they are, where they want to go, their future plans, so that we are able to structure an insurance program that makes sense for them.
Sure.
So we don't have a standard recommendation for coverages. We need to speak with the client, sit down with them, or speak with them on the phone to realize where we need to go.
Sure. Is there any sort of rules of thumb that maybe can at least help get people on the right path or anything along those lines that you might suggest?
The coverages that we want to target right off the bat on the auto insurance and the home insurance policy is going to be the liability coverage. I mean, that's really the rule of thumb that we have in our office, that we need to target those coverages right off the bat. We need to understand where they are, where the client is, the coverages, to see if we can improve those coverages to be able to assess our client's risk a little bit better, and to be able to protect their assets with those coverages.
Okay, perfect. I think I want to come back to that here in a little bit too, because that's one of the big areas that we see we want to maybe poke a little bit on. Can you share maybe some areas that are typically overlooked or things that might be missed easily as people are reviewing their coverages?
That's a great question. On the auto insurance piece, I'm going to say that it's the liability portion of the policy. It's not that it's overlooked, it's just that it's misunderstood by clients. Liability coverage and property damage. Those coverages, the majority of people think that the coverages apply to them as drivers and as named insurance on the policy, where in reality they apply to other people. If you cause the accident, that's the coverage that's going to respond for somebody else's medical expenses, lost wages, their vehicle. You're not going to respond for your vehicle or your medical expenses or your lost wages. So that's really a misconception that a lot of people have. And again, it's one of those areas that we target right off the bat to educate our clients about coverages to see so that we're all on the same page and we go from there.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense, because I would imagine you get people that might have the 100,000 coverage or whatever. It seems like a lot when you're thinking about yourself, but you're not thinking about the other person and liability and medical bills and things like that.
Right. And to piggyback on that, just some statistic that I was reading about last night. The Insurance Information Institute, it's a national nonprofit in the U.S., they are estimating that 17.4% of drivers in Washington State have no insurance at all. They're uninsured. That's not counting the other 15 to 20% that they're estimated have low insurance coverage, or they're underinsured. So we're talking about 30 to 32% of drivers on the road without proper coverage. And think about it, if you're driving to work in the mornings, especially in this weather when it's raining. I mean, it's sunny today, but it's raining, it's nasty out, and 3 out of 10 drivers around you have no insurance or not proper insurance limits.
So that's where, again, your limits come into play, right? Because if they're not covered, obviously you need a little something to
You need to make sure that you're well
difference.
protected yourself, yeah.
That makes sense, okay. To kind of tie into that, and especially on the liability side of things, outside of the auto, when we think about the home coverage side of the equation, do you have any tips or any things to consider for folks that might have more than one property?
If you have more than one property, what we recommend our clients is to title the property under an LLC and insure each property separately if they have less than 8 properties. If they have more than 10 properties, we recommend a master policy.
Okay.
Because it offers more comprehensive coverage, higher limits of liability, and it's more cost effective.
Okay, interesting. So the master policy, how does that differ from like an umbrella policy?
An umbrella will cover excess liability claims against you, against the homeowner,
Yeah.
in case of a lawsuit against them.
Okay.
The master policy has to meet certain underlying requirements when it comes to liability coverage
Okay.
before the umbrella kicks in. So an umbrella policy, it's in hopes that we will not touch the umbrella policy.
I see.
So we want to carry higher insurance limits on the master policy,
Sure,
so
I
that we
see.
don't touch that umbrella.
That makes sense, okay. And one of the things that we suggest, not all the time, but relatively frequently, is umbrella coverages, especially for those who might have a rental property or assets that are at risk. Can you maybe speak to that a little bit, when those come into play, how to, maybe when you should start considering?
On umbrella policy?
Yeah.
So umbrella policies, really what you're trying to do with, we're trying to accomplish with liability coverage is to protect your assets, right? So it's really going to come down to a question of how much are you trying to protect.
Okay.
If it's over $250,000, then you will definitely need an umbrella policy.
Sure. Okay.
Right, because that's the maximum limit of coverage on most auto insurance policies, and $500,000 is the maximum limit of liability coverage on a homeowner's policy.
Okay, that makes
So
sense.
if your net worth is higher than $500,000, let's say, then you should definitely consider an umbrella policy.
Got it. So that's when you really need to start
Yeah.
at least looking into it anyway. And speaking of, there are also underlying minimums before you can look at umbrella. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay. What are those?
On the auto insurance, it's going to be $250,000 liability coverage per person, $500,000 per accident.
That's the 250 and 500
Yeah.
you mentioned.
And on the home insurance piece, it's going to be $300,000. That's going to be your minimum.
Okay. Got it. You had sort of brought this up about uninsured motorists earlier. I'm curious with the auto insurance side of things, if you have somebody driving your car who's not on the policy, or an uninsured person driving your car, how exactly does that work? Or is that policy by policy?
It's it's actually company by company, and each company has different contracts in place. But most companies, well-known companies, your Safeco's, Travelers, Insurance Nationwide, etc., they're going to have a clause in their contract called permissive use.
Okay.
So as long as that other person has your permission to drive their car, they will be covered.
Sure. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, if they don't have that clause in their policy, in their contract, then there is no coverage for somebody else driving your vehicle.
Got it. Okay. And then outside of that, to your point about the 3 in 10 drivers on the road with
Yeah.
little or no insurance, how would your coverage apply to an accident with somebody in that scenario?
Well, the uninsured motorist coverage on your policy will protect you
Okay.
if the other person has no insurance or very little insurance.
Okay.
If somebody is driving your car under your permissive use clause on your policy, coverage extends to them the same way that it applies to you.
That makes sense. So it's just keeping an eye out for those two
Right.
different pieces. Okay, that makes sense. I know one of the things that can affect, or I think anyways, can affect pricing on coverages is things like education, sex, income, occupation. Like, how can you talk a little bit about how those impacts some?
Yeah,
of the
so
coverage?
there's something like 163 variables or factors that impact auto insurance pricing and insurance prices in general on property and casualty, your personal insurance lines. And level of education is one of those variables, age. But here in Washington, the primary variable that impacts pricing is going to be your credit.
Huh. Okay. What? That's Washington specific?
That's Washington,
Huh. Do you know
Washington
why
specific,
that-
Oregon State. It's most states except in California. They don't use credit in California, but most states use credit.
Okay, got it. I didn't realize there was that many variables.
Yeah.
That question's a tough one to answer then, I guess, huh? It also seems like, every time it seems that I renew my coverage, I get some sort of discount, right? I think it's just to kind of get people, get the carriers probably want the business, all that good stuff. How often do you recommend people look at renewing to get some of those discounts and make sure that they're kind of getting the best deal that's available?
We tell our clients to shop, and we actually do it for our clients as a brokerage, every 2 years. 2 to 3 years is the rule of thumb. You don't want to do it every year because there's not enough incentive to do it.
Mm-hmm.
The prices don't change that drastically year to year. But once you start seeing some of those welcome discounts go away over a 2 or 3 year period, that's when you want to start looking again.
Okay. So it's not so much that the costs are growing, it's just that some of those discounts start to...
Some of those discounts, they diminish
Okay, that makes sense.
over a 2 or 3 year period.
Yeah.
If you're getting discounts every year, I don't...
Maybe not every year. Maybe it just feels like every year.
Yeah.
Along those lines, I know that a lot of times bundling and, kind of keeping everything under one package can be helpful too. Is that as helpful as it may seem on the surface?
It is.
Okay.
Some of these companies, some of these insurance carriers, they offer up to 20% discount on the home insurance or the auto insurance.
Okay.
If you bundle the package, the home and auto insurance at least.
Okay. And even if you were to separate, you have the best carrier over here versus here, it's still not going to...
It's not going to be as competitive
Got
if
it.
you have 2 different companies.
Okay, that makes sense. I guess one of the things that obviously keeps coming up in the area since, what was that? Was that, I don't know, that was back in, I think, the early 2000s or so. We had that big earthquake, right? One of the things that keeps coming up is we're due for this big earthquake here in Washington State. I'm curious how or if most people are covered for something like that around here.
It's a great question, and I think and I feel that more people should be insured for earthquake insurance coverage. And the III, again, that the Insurance Information Research Center, they estimate that only 14% of the population actually carry that coverage.
Huh.
On our book, in our brokerage, it's less than 10%.
Okay.
The coverage is expensive. Deductibles are high. You're talking about 15 to 25% of your total coverage as your deductible.
Oh, wow.
So if you have $1 million house, you're
Right.
talking, at a 25% deductible, you're talking about $250,000
Huh. Interesting.
in deductible.
Now, is that just like a rider that you add onto the policy, or
It
is that a
depends
whole
on the
separate-
insurance company.
Okay.
Some companies will add it as a rider. Some companies, I have to write a separate policy for
Okay.
that coverage.
Okay. Along some of these, the lines of these kind of nuanced things that you might see, if somebody has valuable assets, maybe it's a jewelry collection or, I don't know, fossils, whatever the heck it might be, when would you say is a good time to start considering insuring those types of pieces, outside of obviously what you already have in rental or homeowners insurance?
So it's going to come down to creating an inventory of your personal articles, we call them, your jewelry, your fossils, right, your artwork. Every insurance policy, home insurance policy has limits. They have standard limits. Your jewelry limit on most policies is $2,500. So if you have more than that, say you've got $20,000 worth of coverage, worth of jewelry, then you may want to consider extending your jewelry coverage.
Okay, so that's actually listed in
It's
the
listed
policies.
on, yeah.
Okay, keep an eye out for that number, as basically as long as it's over,
Yeah.
think about it.
And it's called special limits of coverage.
Okay, that's good to know. So as a broker, I know you're able to work with a lot of the different carriers that are out there. What are some of the top carriers, like the ones that you feel most strong about, ones that you find very competitive, very good to work with, and why, I guess, as well?
Right now, the companies that we currently work with, because of the way they take care of the clients, the way that their service team communicates with us, their responsiveness, I'm going to say are Safeco, Nationwide, Allied, Progressive, Platinum, and Travelers Insurance. They seem to be the most responsive. They're great with clients, they're great with claims, and they're competitive in the marketplace.
Okay, and from what I understand, that differs state to state, right? Is that the case? Different carriers are more...
More competitive in certain states.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's here in Washington then?
That's in Washington State.
Okay. And would you say that same applies to Oregon and California to some degree as well, or?
Progressive is very competitive in Oregon State.
Mhm.
And great coverages, great customer service and claims responsiveness, time as well in
Mhm.
Oregon. California is going to be your Safeco, Allied, and Nationwide.
Okay.
Going to be your most competitive or your top companies.
Interesting, okay, okay. Great, well, I think maybe that's a good place to kind of wrap up here today. If people do want to get in touch with you, they have any questions, or, maybe want to kind of take a look at what they've got, is there a good way for them to reach out?
Yeah, they can call us. They can reach our office directly at 888-244-8660. And that's our main office here in Seattle. We're at the World Trade Center. So if you guys want to come see us, give us a call. We'll be there for you.
All right. Well, thanks again, Carlos. It's great to
Thank
have
you.
you on. Yeah, I think it was really helpful, so appreciate your time.
Thanks.
Thank you guys for joining us again for the Mainsail podcast series. If you do have any questions for us, feel free to email us info@mainsailfg.com. That's info@mainsailfg.com. Thanks for joining us. Have a good day.